Hello. Just a little disclaimer before the start of this episode. I'm not sure what happened with my volume, but I was very quiet through the recording when I played it back. So I tried my best to edit that and make myself the same volume as Dagfinn, just about how it is in the other podcasts. I don't know if I did a good job of it or not. I think I did. So if you don't think I did, I'll pull the episode and do more editing to make it better for y'all. You just gotta let me know. And without further ado, hello and welcome to the Explorer's Journal, the first, and thus the best, Ark World podcast. Join me south of the Draken's Fall and north of the Jernspeak. Join me from the farthest western point of Essandaluca to the eastern shores of Halvamain. The mages in the Mildark provide me the room and the magic at Mount Orion to project my voice all around the world of Archimundi Altius. On today's episode,
we got to go deeper in the halflings because last episode we talked about what the different halflings were all about. Now, I think we should go into how to put them together, how to make a warband out of it.
Yeah, so we could, talk about both buying them in real life and then also purchasing them in-game using gold. So.
Yes, because if you buy them in real life, you probably want to play with them, and if you want to play with them, you have to buy them, so you can't really do one without the other unless you're doing them for display only, which is a good thing, but...
It's not what we're here for.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think just going straight into the obvious thing, get the starter warband. If you're buying them, and also because you need a sheriff anyways in the warband. Also, you got 6 militias of different kind of equipment. You can also have the faction set, which is a big one. I think thematically, let's go for the smaller warband, and then we can have like a base, and we can just expand in different directions.
Yeah, so if you're new to the game, maybe you're not sure if you should spend the £95, £105 that it is for the full faction.
No.
It's a good idea to start somewhere, and like Dagfinn said, starting with the intro beginner set that comes with the sheriff, the 6 militia, and the trollhounds is a pretty good investment to see if you like the game.
Also, just let you know, if you're playing Arkworld for the first time, I would go for the getting started with the Arkworld edition, where you get the rulebook as well.
Right, exactly.
Because that's adding £5 for a very nice piece of literature. So yeah, we've got to start a warband, and as I said, you need the sheriff, and then you can also go with you got the 6 militia, 2 with torches, 2 with crossbows, and 2 with swords, and a hand weapon, a shield. So you could also use those in loads of different type of equipment and proxy them a bit just to get to know what they're all about. Mm-hmm. And I think before you go further from that, when you want to expand, there's a few things you need to be self-conscious about. What floats your boat? What is it about playing Arkworld that you fancy? Is it the nice-looking models? Is it what you can do with them painting? Is it what they do in gaming terms? Is it what gives you most bang for the buck?
Right. All those... things that certain characters might let you think about certain feats. Like we brought up throwing the torch with the halfling with the torch. So maybe you have an idea and there's a certain figure that lets you really bring that idea to life.
Yes, gaming and roleplay is a big thing of Arkworld, so going down that route could be very interesting as well. So just be mindful of that before you go forward, and we will be coming back to that during the podcast, I think, because it's a very important way of, in any war game, really, what is it that you want to achieve?
Yeah, it's all very good points. It's definitely something that a new player, and even maybe an older player, should be thinking about all the time. Because, if you buy something and never use it, then it's just a shelf warmer.
Yeah, building up that pile of shame.
Yeah, and believe
and
me.
We all, everybody who's been into wargaming know what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. All the models who never got around to finishing. Yes. So just be a bit mindful of what you got and what you want to do with them. And personally, I got a soft heart for like the fleeing halfling. He is he's a great looking model, but you can't really use him in game terms. You could use him as an objective marker, but so just keep that in mind. But you could also use him just as a normal naked halfling. Well, he's got clothes on, but no equipment on him. Just a militia with hand weapon, basically. So you could do that. But I think if you go back to the previous episode and listen to when we talk about the different unit choices, that brings a bit of what you want to do with it. And when you're creating a warband, you should also think of how big it will be. Are you going to sort of like go for the 1,000 gold coin? That brings a different element into what you're going to have in your collection compared to if you're just going to do small skirmish.
Yeah, and especially if you decide to do those mass combat rules that I think people forget about a little too much nowadays.
Indeed.
I think another thing is purchasing in a certain progression so you could better learn the ins and outs of the game.
Yes.
So you have someone, like, I think magic is such an important part of the game for people to learn, which would be, in the Halfling's case, the battle cook.
At that again, bring the battle cook if you want to get into the game real quick, if you're good with understanding rules and stuff like that. If you're a bit cautious, if you want to take it slow, maybe go for the mounted militia or the town guard, just to have different aspects of the normal militia to play around with.
Yeah, see, I would actually rate the town guard as something that you buy later because of the habits that they teach you. They teach you that it's easy to keep your commander safe, but I don't think that's a healthy mindset for someone to be in the beginning, because when you switch to a faction that doesn't have that ability, the bodyguard ability, then you might be playing that commander as if they were sheriff with town guard and lose them early. So
yes, and then again, he is a very expensive. The bodyguard is very expensive in game terms, just to keep the commander alive. So it's a very expensive expansion to the commander, but it's a cheap investment.
Yeah,
a town guard it's like £6 for a town guard, and there are 3 of them to choose from. So it's a cheap investment into your collection, and they look good. And you could also use them just as heavy armored militia.
Yeah, and the new sculpts that Alex put out too, they look fantastic.
And then you have those 3, and you have the classic town guard as well. So you got basically 6 different poses, and the 3 classic ones are £10.
Yeah.
So that's a cheaper investment if you want just. But as you said, it might be a crouch you don't want to learn to use. So maybe wait for it a bit and go for like the mounted ones instead, just to have that mobility, and you could do great things with them. We've seen people with a mounted town guard with bows that I really enjoyed using.
Yeah, they're fast, they're hard to beat, and they can hit pretty hard themselves. So.
Yeah, they're only that one cavalry type, which is the mounted one with spears, so you have to use proxy or convert them. But
yeah, so I'm thinking before town guard, but after battle cook, maybe you go for the monster hunter.
Yeah,
just
or more troll hounds.
Right, or more troll hounds. Just anything, because a lot of the scenarios and a lot of the game features, beasts coming in from the side of the board or from a piece of terrain.
Exactly. If you don't know what to do, throw a troll in it.
Yeah.
That's jack of all trades. Throw a troll in it, and to have a monster hunter really helps.
And then especially with the monster hunter, we talked last time about how they're pretty simple, but they have that high skill ceiling with the traps, with the lasso. So that lets people really kind of learn the depth of the character, earlier.
True. But then again, it is compared to the normal militia, which is like just basic gaming pieces, the monster hunter got a lot of special rules. Right. So you need to be prepared for, all right, this can do that and this can do that, and not being. I wouldn't bring that monster hunter to a demo game
No, not at all. Not at all.
And neither would they bring the cook.
Hmm.
Well, as when you do the gaming play, you will when you play for yourself, you would like to have both in your collection at least.
So, I mean, from there, you pretty much have the makings of a decent army coming. Like, you have the militia, the sheriff, the monster hunter, the trollhounds, the town guard.
Keep in mind that even though the second edition selection of militia is not that big, like just 2 of each equipment, there is a long back catalogue as well. So you can really explore if you want to just go all in on cheap militia types.
Right.
You can go for the first edition ones as well. Because that's another way you want to go. If you want to play, we talked about it earlier, if you want a gaming style that includes a lot more models, going for the first edition models to just expand on both with more great weapons, and you got the rangers that came with the Troll Bridge set. You got loads of archers, you got loads of heavy weapons, and you can also go for the Halfling Civil War models, so you get more like halberds, and so you can really expand on the militia type and using quantity as a gaming style compared to going in for magic and
really
other options.
Plays into what we talked about in the last episode, where halflings are kind of the weak big group of things instead of the individual strong models like elves and beast folk might be.
So yeah, we talked a bit about the different types of models, different types of preferences. So we talked a bit about what you like, and you have to be honest with that. If you like a model, you'll paint the model, and if you paint the model, you go to play with it.
Right.
So selecting a model you like is important, and I, personally, that's what I go for first. The ones I pick out of my box is the ones that I like the best the looks of, and they are the one I'm going to be using as well.
Yeah, and I found that fully painted models tend to roll better than bare pewter and bare plastic models.
Oh, it would be a bit shame to bring them on, and the moment somebody else's die, you just swap them over real quickly. I say I'm going to use this one instead. So definitely go for models you like the looks of. But you will also find that when you play, you will find preference to something you bring more often into your warband. The only way to do that is by playing games, and you find, all right, I really enjoy the way this one works.
Right, yeah, I like how the town guard plays with the sheriff. I like how the mounted archer plays with the monster hunter, whatever you may do. Or, hey, I like the thing flinger, so I want to take 3 of them.
Yes, and we haven't really mentioned the thing flinger yet, and that's for good reason, because it is an expensive model to buy. It's £35, but it's also a very expensive model to use in the game. It costs like 200 gold.
Yeah, I would actually say it costs 240 gold. Because
at least
need that militia.
Yeah, I would say 3, maybe 4 militia to crew it. So we are up to 420, 460 gold crowns for to have the thing playing in the game.
And I think that you want at least 2 of those halflings to have range weapons to kind of mitigate that loss of combat potential. So
maybe.
You have 2.
That's 500.
Yeah, it could be a pretty expensive thing flinger.
It is. So you're going to go up quite high in point cost before it's even worth bringing. But it is such a cool model. It's actually the one I'm going to paint up next.
So I have a funny story about thing flingers, actually. We had that Christmas free shipping thing a few weeks ago, a month ago about, and I bought all my models. I made this whole big plan to buy certain models, and then the total came out to whatever it came out to. It wasn't too bad, and then I get the email for like, oh, we're preparing your order, we're going to ship it. So I'm looking at the order. I accidentally ordered 2 thing flingers.
Oh,
So, I mean,
nice.
I'm happy with that. It's just, it was a nice surprise from me to me, I guess.
Just a small hobby tip on that thing flinger thing.
Hmm.
Uh, magnetize the actual machinery
Right.
so that you can take it off the back of the bullocks, because then you can mount it, just place it on the table as a fixed feature, either as a scenery thing or if you're doing a scenario and whatnot. And you can use the bullocks as a gaming piece as well.
Yeah, like an
So you don't,
objective. Or,
yeah, objective and just right. The mission is to get this beast of burden across the table, protect it.
that's a good idea.
That's what I'm doing with mine. It also makes it easier to paint. So yeah, you talked a bit about gaming experiences. We all played games and had a bit of fun with it. And like one of my favorite things with the in game was when my cook really beefed up my sheriff. And I think the cook is probably one of my favorite models in the game terms because of what it's able to do to the entire warband. And he gave it like the Cocklegriff Madras to give it that extra special attack.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave it he overpowered, and he gave it a Bullock's Burgers as well. So you may reroll failed tests as well. So he was really, really just going out and kicking butt. And yeah, I think he took out 2 models in one turn.
Oh wow, you made a super soldier there.
Yeah, it was a really going out, guns blazing.
Yeah, my Halfling, my cook story is probably having a sheriff standing his ground, and over the course of 2 rounds, he healed for 8 wounds just because I managed to get 2 mystery meat surprises in a row. So, like, you have such a bulky model, just never go down at that point.
Just plant your shield and come and get me.
Yeah, eat up, buddy.
And then we have things that don't go as well. Thing fling is that failing their initiative and losing important crew members, and yeah.
Oh no, or getting an honest stone and you end up rolling 15 hits and they defend against all 15.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's so nerve-wracking. I think that's a brilliant thing about the game when you save, and you're right. You're going to fail one of these soon. You're like, I'm giving you 7 wounds, and you just need to fail 2 of them, and you could just keep saving and saving and saving and saving and crit saving and they just bounce off.
Or the shield comes into play. They fail the defense roll, shield, and then succeed, and they keep succeeding. I think they succeeded the first 6 rolls, failed the 7th, shielded the 7th, and then crit save like 2 of the last 8 that they had to. It was rough.
So yeah, and that brings us back to, as I said, the reason why I normally bring a cook, because the magic bit I really, really love, and it's a very important gaming piece in my warband. So I end up bringing a sheriff and bringing a cook, and building my warband around those, having a bit of range support,
yeah, and then
having some hounds as well.
When you start playing, 1,200 or 1,500 points, you might be able to get 2 cooks or 3 thing flingers and really have this core group that's just bullying the board like that.
Indeed. As I said, also hounds is very important because they got agile, and that also makes it a very important because you can really move fast and go for objectives. You can go and stop the enemy advancing.
Yeah.
So and that's why my last purchase was the old hounds as well. So now I got both the new and the old hounds, and yeah, just expanding that bit. I got them because I really enjoyed using the hounds in the game.
Yeah, they're good. They're quick. They're cheap. You can't ask for more from them. No matter what they do a good job.
And I had great experience. I think that was on the online game I did with Alex on Tabletop Simulator, where I had the hound just cling onto the dragon, and it couldn't really shake it off. That's a reason to just keep bringing them back, because you enjoy playing with them.
All right, so if you were to say to a new player, you bought the starter set, here's the definitive purchasing order, what would you say would be the first thing to buy? Since we've been talking about these models for the past 15, 20 minutes.
I would say, like I said in the beginning, know what you want out of it. Know yourself. And based on that, I can give advice. If you like reading rules and that, go for either the Cook or the Monster Hunter. If you just enjoy strategy, go for more Militia.
Right.
Both foot and mounted. And if you go for quality, then you go for the Town Guard. So I can't really give a definitive what's to buy next, because it's not me who's going to play it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's definitely fair. Because I had this whole list in my head and that I wrote out on, things to buy, but I never really took into account what the player wants. It's more of those slow progressions you can take to just learning the game. And that might leave people with things they don't play with. So I think you make a good point there.
What would you recommend?
So for that slow progression, and it's probably not the best list for everybody, I would say the first purchase should be the Battle Cook, because that gives you the chance to learn the magic system, and it gives you the ability to see how it interacts with your models, and you get the feel for like when to cast certain spells before games get too big. After that, I do like the Monster Hunter because of the rules, where you start learning that a character is not such a basic thing. There's a lot of depth to them.
And being that role-playing game aspect to it as well.
After that, I like the idea of the Town Guard. That layers on another thing to learn, where you don't want Bodyguard too early in your play because it teaches you those bad habits. But once you learn how to keep your commander safe without it, then you could start learning how to keep your commander safe with it. So it's kind of like rewarding you for being a good player.
Yeah, and also it adds that extra strategy, making an anvil for your army is something that you can center around and just move that anvil forward.
Yeah, and that's something we talked about last episode. And then after that, the Thing Flinger, because of the price in real life and in game. Like it's at that point, you're committed to the game. Like, you're not just playing a couple of models on the table. You're actually in the rules. You've digested them. You've torn them apart, and the game's become something that you should kind of almost know inside and out.
Yeah. And Thing Flinger got a whole set of special rules as well, so it's good to not get too many of those too early on.
Yeah, so in that, you're kind of layering the rules in a way that feels kind of natural to me. But like you brought up, it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. And then after that, you want to get at least 2 more Trollhounds at some point to take advantage of Pack Hunter. You want to get more Militia because it's Militia. You want to get at least 2 more Town Guard to take advantage of the make and take orders.
Yes, you haven't really talked about the mounted options yet. So there are both mounted sergeants and there are mounted cavalry, just mounted militia. And all of those, I think, would be maybe before Town Guard in your list.
They're a little more expensive, but they can kind of teach you a little bit more about like a mounted unit, how they have more health and more speed and things.
And it changed the gameplay a lot. When you got
it does.
Move faster and you punch a bit hard. Sorry, not punch harder, but you take more.
Yeah, you take more abuse.
More hit. Yeah.
And you get 3 mounted halflings, and they take and act as one order. Then you start really seeing how you can kind of go like Mongol, all mounted all the time, and have a lot of fun with it too.
True. So another thing that really depends on what you choose, I find, is what you're going to be facing.
Yeah.
Normally, you don't really know what you'll be playing, but let's face it, it's a small community, and I know 2 players I can meet in person and play the game with that have models on their own.
Yeah, I know one, and the other one's me, so
Yes.
I definitely
So
know what I'm doing.
basically, exactly. So I know what I'll be facing up against and what their strengths are and what the weaknesses are, and I can sort of like adapt to it.
Right.
So what I find is that one of the faction I'm facing off against is the Undead, and just taking that Harbinger out early is vital. So I'm not really scared of the Undead, but you have to go for the commanders and you have to go for them early on.
Yeah, especially with that whole resurrection deal.
And that sort of like makes me choose what I bring. And if I play against the Undead Raiders, you want to avoid those critters because they're just in the way and stopping you from doing what you want. And I find that really annoying.
Yeah, definitely.
Either that, or small critters in terms of grifflings and all the other small-sized monsters.
Yeah, and then speaking of undead, you have that deathly chill from the old Mana Bones, the mage character. And if they do that to your commander, then it cuts your AP down, which that jeopardizes your ability to do a make orders. And then if they do it to your thing flinger, that's even worse.
Yeah, if you spend a lot of points on the thing flinger and you can't really do anything, it really ties you down. The other army I'm normally playing against is the Wild Elves.
Oh boy, the Wild Elves.
I've been having good fortune against the Wild Elves, but that's not mainly because of my skills, but his bad luck. He can't really make the summoning things work because that takes a lot. That's sort of like a dual-edged blade for the Wild Elves to find. Is that it's a great thing to do, but it takes so much of their efforts early on in the game.
Yeah, they have to get that proper balance for it to work out.
Yeah, get the summoning working early on, and that really limits what you could do with the really brutal characters, because you want the supporting characters coming to play. So, but if they manage to get that summoning thing working, they are a tough nut to crack, because they also just keep coming back.
Yeah, I mean, you have your halflings with the torch, but you don't want to spend all that time attacking those when you could go for other things. And then, all the elves have sacrifice, which is incredibly dangerous for halflings, because off the bat, you have 6 health. And it's so easy to get you down to 1 health or 2 health, depending on how you count that 25% for 6 for sacrifice to get pulled off. You have the war chief with that blood rage attack, and if he knocks out 1 halfling, he can knock out a second one in 1 hit with that blood rage, especially if he has the Fey Blade or 2-hand weapons. They have the strong bow that could just knock you out, and that's 20 inches away. You have no way to get to them unless you really leg it.
Yeah, or stay out of cover.
But I think the worst thing that happened to me was the Wild Elf Druid casting the Merciless Wood spell on one of my militia, and it knocked out 2 of them next to it. And what that spell does, for people that don't know it, is it turns whatever it knocks out into wood fiends.
Ouch.
So my front line was 3 wood fiends. And that's scary. That's very scary.
Ouch.
So my suggestion is a well-placed thing flinger shot on their commander.
Yeah, and that's also the same with both the Ancient Dead and the Undead Raiders. Is go for the commanders, go for the ones that really makes up for it. But it's unlike the Undead. With the Wild Elves, you are exposing yourself a bit when you do it.
Yeah.
because, as you said, if you got like a Feyblade and Blood Rage, he could really mess you up. So you need to pick the targets, pick your fights. Other things I'm a bit scared of using against my halflings is big stuff. I have played against monsters like the Titan big size ones a few times, and it's scary.
Oh, definitely.
Because you could pile onto, but then again you have the morale thing, so you might not get all the models into contact that you want to get into contact, and you just end up handing out snacks.
Yeah, because all of the halflings are 30 millimeter, which is perfect for gobble and power too.
So yeah, and if they got other skills like tail swipe and other stuff that sort of like affect models in base contact, it's scary with the big guys, and you could take them out with using a thing flinger, but then again you probably won't have that yet,
right?
Because as we said, it's an expensive equipment to bring.
Yeah, and then in general, since we brought up the tail swipe, the gobble, there's a lot of abilities that specifically affect the 30 millimeter base size, which is all of your halflings.
No, not the mounted ones. Not the mounted ones. So if you go for cavalry, then they are on 40 mil base, I think.
Right, so Cav have another advantage. That's a very good thing to keep in mind.
But you could still, a troll could still gobble them.
And then usually, if you're facing beasts, sometimes they're taken by beast folk, and you have the beast folk vermin, who we talked about threat ranges in the last episode. They out-threaten you with Sikkim by a fair bit, and they're cheaper than militia. So, it's kind of like facing the wood fiends, where you have your cheap halflings facing off against something even cheaper, while the big guy's coming up to eat all your halflings. And that's not a position you want to be in.
You get softened up, and then the real guys come in, and you're down to a few wounds. So yeah, that brings me probably over to the third step in Warband creation, and that is out of faction models. Because the Arkwell game, you can basically choose. Oh, I like this model. I want this in my warband. You could have a ragtag gang of, basically the classic role-playing group, where you have like an orc, and you have an elf, and you have a human, and you have a monster of some sort. You can all mix mash them together, and they can act together in your warband as well. And I think that's a fun thing to do. However, if you do that, you might just want to keep in mind that anybody not within your
kingdom,
then you get at a disadvantage. You basically have to take a morale test in order to act according to the commander's plan.
Yeah, so in the game there's 4 kingdoms. There's the civilized nations, which is the Imperials, the Halflings, and the Norsefold. There's the nomads of the Wild, which is the beast folk, the orcs, and the gremlins. There's the Fey Menace, which is the Wild Elves, Wizards, and Dark Lords. And then there's the Heinous Undead, which are the Raiders, the Ancient Dead, and the Vampires. The Halflings are part of the civilized nations, so they play nicest with Imperials and Norsefold, who aren't released yet at the time of this podcast recording.
They are, the old ones are around, so we basically know what they're going to be.
Right.
And I think the main reason to take the Imperials is to get access to their
rifles.
Arclock rifles. And if you do that, you could still play them as halflings because there are Arclock armed halflings in the old Civil War models. So I think that's probably the main reason to go for the Imperials. And the Ogre as well.
Also the Tinker, because he's a halfling to begin with,
and he's looking great.
B, he's got that arcane shielding, So you get some defense against range attacks on the way in. And then C, which is something that I think is also something I'm afraid of with him, is he has the Arcane Sync ability. So he can deny a spell being cast. And that's really good against halflings. It's also really good with halflings.
Mm.
So, and Imperial Troopers are pretty much the exact same thing as halfling militia. Like in stats, in cost.
And then you can go off to the bit more bizarre. And I don't really know what I would choose, to be honest. Of course, you could do. You could always do the Mercenaries, which is a separate section altogether.
Yeah, I
which
think
also will fight for you more or less.
The ones that have rules, Rabintude and the Explorer. Rabintude, he gives you that extra power against beasts, and then he can make potions for your guys. So he gives you that bit of sustain. I think it makes your guys stronger. It gives you a better position. The Explorer with his journal, Charmblade is big. There are so many effects based on criticals. Making something critical on a 5 or a 6.
Oh yes,
very nice.
Yeah, and then we can expand into monsters, because as far as I can tell, monsters can be included in the Warband without a penalty, unlike off-kingdom factions.
Can they?
Yes, because the rules say, taking creatures in your Warband, creatures can be taken as part of your Warband, as if they were part of your faction rule set.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
Your imagination goes wild.
Oh, that's so cool. Then I made a mistake in the last podcast when I brought up the troll with the town standard. That's awesome. I should read the rules more. Everyone read your rules more. But yeah, you have so many options in the beasts.
And that is something that will expand tremendously, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think when Alex is done releasing all the factions, he will dive into the monsters and the mercenaries a bit more and expand that, because that's unending. It's so many to choose from.
So let's talk about some beasts that you would want to hire then, with my newfound knowledge of how beasts work.
The most natural choice for me personally is the Cocklegriff, which isn't released for 2nd edition yet. It got rules in 1st edition. Basically because that's built into my background story, so I would choose that reason. I would also choose Grifflings.
Definitely
basically,
Grifflings.
Because they are cheap and they fill that control the battlefield role, just being in the way, speed bumps.
And then Bombs Away gives you that extra control and utility.
Aside from that, I would probably go for Trolls, just because I like the models.
Yeah.
Again, the reason why you select things is not basically on what skills they got, but because there are other reasons. It would be cool to have like a dragon tag along, but then we're talking big money.
I'm thinking the little Arcanids too. They're a little more expensive than your militia, but they have the web spray and the web spinner, and they're fast, so you have a lot of that battlefield control. And if they get knocked out, they drop a token. You can pick it up. There you go.
Yeah, and the tokens cost 15 gold.
Yeah, the first one's 25, and then it goes up by 10.
Yes.
After that.
So that's basically a lot of the costs just bought right back. If you're nearby to pick them up, that is.
And another thing I would pick is the Fairy Dragon, because he has that ability that could reduce the AP of characters in his AoE. So that combines with your ability to do the same in Halflings. With the Spoon Thwack and the Sheriff's ability to do so. And then he also has that AoE heal, which is awfully nice, and it helps keep your guys going.
Yeah.
The Troll is a good call, too. He gives you that nice ranged attack, and he's pretty tanky.
And you could probably use him to throw your halflings forward, because you got an attack that throws players around, and you can say I want to use him to to throw more models forward instead of damaging them. You could use them to like get more movement out of them. Basically, the monster list is endless, and you can do all of them and none of them, and have it like be cool to just have a sheriff with his small dragon, juvenile dragon, as that's your warband.
Yeah.
Or you could use the monster hunter as your sheriff, and just use the sheriff rules, and have him with like loads of grifflings. But if you go into when you get that disadvantage of losing half your AP, because that's a disadvantage. If you fail your bravery test, you lose half your AP. If you're fighting for a different kingdom.
Yes, I'm going to throw you some ideas. Let me know what
you
think. So, let's say you're a halfling player. You want to take some beast folk, right? Beast folk can give you a lot of melee power that you don't get with your halflings. Like,
Indeed.
you take a clan beast. He's 50 more gold than a militia with a two-hand weapon, but he has 4 more health, 2 more AP, comparable output to that militia with a two-hand weapon, and he doesn't have the disadvantages of the weapon. I think that sounds pretty nice.
It is punchy, but then again, when you're using him as a tank to strike hits on others, you risk of losing his action points.
Right.
And then you suddenly have less action points than the militia. But whereas if you use like vermin instead, which you don't really need all the AP, you just need them to be in the way.
Yeah, you just need the one for Leggett, really.
Yeah. And just to be in the way and being a speed bump and being cheap. So of the beast folk, I think the smaller ones probably more useful because they fill a role gaming-wise that don't require so much of the bravery test. But then again, they probably fail the bravery test more often, so you buy them at a disadvantage, basically with half AP.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in that event, I would want to have the grifflings over anything that, like the vermin.
True.
Just half the price, and they're not going to lose their AP.
True.
I mean, otherwise in the beast folk, the hedge witch is nice, but like you said, if you lose AP, then you don't cast spells. And her spells, like bestial strength, could be such a big thing if you can get it off.
And if you combine that with a halfling hot pot, so giving her the Arcanite tokens, could be.
Yeah, then you got a stew going.
Yeah, the witch and the cook.
There's the Kelpie, and that has the cloying mist, which helps you get upfield. But he's kind of expensive for just that purpose. Like, I'd rather take a Tinkerer if I need the defense against ranged attacks.
Yeah. You could also have a troll and have the models hide behind it, going in its shadow, giving them a cover.
Yeah, nice little escort.
Like basically what they did in World War One with the tanks.
Yeah.
So yeah, other kingdoms. The Undead.
Yeah, I could think of one thing that makes a lot of sense for me in the Undead. Aside from the carrion rats, because they're so cheap. The Will-o'-the-Wisp. Because if you set up a series of traps with your monster hunters, Will-o'-the-Wisp can lure things to move towards those traps. So it's kind of a way to guarantee that the trap gets set off. And that doesn't cost you any AP.
Clever. Yeah, I like that idea. Because you basically have to, as we said earlier, calculate the AP thing. And all that ignoring armor is very, very worthwhile. Aside from that, I think the main reason to bring both the Undead and most likely the Ancient Kingdoms is the Raise the Dead thing. And you can't get that because then you need a commander.
With Undead, the Old Man of Bones actually is supposed to have the Raise the Dead ability. It just, I remember Alex bringing that up a while back because he has Soul Eater, but he doesn't have Raise the Dead, so he's supposed to have it.
So, it would be interesting to see what kind of potential combinations you can get. And if you're into undead halflings, there is actually one. So you could incorporate them just for the fun of it. If you go roleplay story wise, I have in my background story a halfling wizard, which sort of did something to his companion. It's like, and he ended up being dead, not realizing he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
So he just kept hanging around and
just lives his best life. Yeah.
Yeah, all the flesh just rotted off him and just a skeleton. And you can't really tell him that you're dead because he doesn't really know it. So he had to constantly move out of town and go on trips with this dead person just to make sure that nobody understands it. So you could base a story around that. He's living the best life ever, forever. So that's the undead section. Can't really see the reason to bring loads of the undead.
The carrion rats for the same purpose we were brought up for the vermin too. Like they don't really need the extra AP.
No,
and they're cheap.
But then again, why bring those over grifflins? And the wild elf, you could bring some to have that summoning thing going for you.
And the bulk, it's just you're kind of paying a lot of points for the chance to have half of your AP taken away.
The wild elves do have better bravery.
Yeah, they do.
And that will help you.
And then they have sacrifice too, which if you use it at the right moment, it can provide you with more Arcanite. So you can have Arcanite from your cook, from the wild elf that you recruit, and maybe you take a Arcanite or something, and then you have 3 sources of possible Arcanite on the board, which could change the game.
True.
What do you think the future of the halflings is going to be? Like,
what I think, or what do I want?
Both. Let's split it. What do you think is going to happen aside from the obvious more equipment and item option?
The main thing to keep in mind when it comes to the halfling future is that it is the most selling faction around. So therefore, they will be supported. Mm-hmm. I expect to see halfling undeads. I expect to see halflings in the Norsevalds.
Right.
I expect to see halflings coming up all around because they are so popular. And also, that's a good reason why there is halflings in the Imperial Kickstarter, as many as there are.
Yeah.
So there was like the Arklands, and there was the Tinkerer, and there was the Fleeing Halfling.
What about bullocks? Do you think they're going to make different weapons for the bullocks and armor?
I don't think so, but it's an interesting idea. We'd really like to see some more different types of bullocks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to see maybe a chariot pulled by a bullocks.
Yes, chariots. That's nothing we've seen in the game yet. Yeah. Could also have a ram chariot.
Yeah,
2 rams and pulling a chariot behind them. That would be interesting. But I kind of like the really old models because there's something in them that's been lost a bit when they found their flavor.
Right.
And now those are the festive halfling, the one with a meat and beer, and you have a drummer. So stuff like that, I like to see more. And he's released the Fleeing Halfling, which is a really great non-militia model. So I would hope to see, model-wise, more of those different types of, just to flesh out the community of the halflings.
Right.
But in gaming terms, I'd like to see maybe mounted archers.
Mm-hmm, definitely. I think a lot of us want to see that now.
Or just and because you have the sheep already there, you could basically just make a new set of rider. Just maybe a 200 weapon rider, a archer rider, and maybe even a town guard rider. So you got those 3 extra models.
I'd like to see more mages too, just as a universal thing. And then more spell options. One of the things that I don't like in some games is that they'll release mages that have no connection between the magic they use when they're in the same faction. So I'd like to see maybe mages pick 4 spells from their spell book that they could use for that game. And you have like a dozen spells or something at various success values for the tarot flip.
Ah, interesting. So basically select like the magic for them. So you can buy cook, a guy that knows 3 or 4 dishes.
And then you pick which spells you want to bring with you, like up to 4 spells.
That might be something coming for the Wizards faction. So we can see how it works there. Another thing I'd really like to see in the Halfling future is a monster-mounted sheriff. The option to mount the sheriff like on the back of a cocklegriff, or have him mount him on a troll. And that could be all over, not just the Halflings, but all the factions.
Yeah, I mean, we already have the Beast Rider, so there's precedent for it.
Yes. And that can be the Imperials could have like something like a griffin type model as well, or a huge bear lion monster. So there, and I think the monster section is a place to really expand, because I think that's going back to the early days of Warplock. The monsters were something that he really let his creativity go wild on.
Right.
And I think with the game finding its feet and finding its shape, the monsters have become like secondary. So I like to really see those come back to the forefront again.
You know what I really, really would love to see, though?
No.
The Halfling picnic table. There's rules for it. He just has to pluck them. He just has to take the rules
approve them
and make it his.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah. And then in the same vein, I'd like to see items that kind of copy the spell effects, but they're kind of priced expensive. So, maybe not the mystery meat surprise, but, the hearty veggie soup, the mutton stew, the burgers, and the madras. Like, maybe have an item that costs double the success value in gold. So the hearty veggie soup's a success on 14. Maybe have the item stew cost 28 or 30. And the idea would be that it gives you that competitive and compelling reason to pick that, or pick a mage who could do it every turn, if that makes sense. Like,
but then you lose the magic bit of it if you allow them. But fabled artifacts definitely would be something to include. Just a few, just a few for each faction.
Yeah, there are some in the advanced rules, but they haven't made it to the basic rules, and I guess that might be an advanced rules thing from Alex's thoughts and opinions on it.
Yes, the advanced rules will probably be fleshed out more in the future, because I think it's only the alpha rules that are out. So it's really, really early days, and I haven't really heard anything about those moving on any time in the future. So, but going back to other rules that I would like to include, because I talked about the old drummer model, and having something that could be used to like increase command range or boost bravery or morale.
Yeah, the drummer would definitely work for that. Like, maybe he gives everybody in some bubble a +1 morale bonus or something to that effect.
Reroll, yeah, something like that. Would like to see, because that really fit with the militia type of, and that could be used for the Imperials as well.
Yeah, that'd be perfect for the Imperials too. It would make them feel a lot like the Napoleonic Revolutionary War army that they kind of look like. We really kind of covered everything that we were going to cover about halflings, didn't we?
I think so, yeah.
So, what's the community think about halflings? For starters, we've brought up that they were the most popular faction, and Alex confirmed that on his Swamp Wyvern painting livestream. So, they're definitely a faction that's on people's minds. They're probably the flagship faction for the game.
A fun story there is that Alex's friends used to tease him that he sells halflings for a living.
Now look at him now.
Oh yeah.
And actually, I put it out to the Facebook group to give us some community input. I only got one response from Edward Owen Jones for this first one, but I think we'll get more responses in the future. Some of his thoughts were that he'd like to see more women in the ranks of the halflings.
Oh yes, that's very true.
Militia sculpts and some other options like town guard, sheriffs. Because right now there's really only a few female models. There's Crimson Rita, there's Brunhild von Nordberg, first edition sheriff, which is a first edition model, and 2 of the Crimson Fellowship models. And Rita and Brunhilde don't currently have stats, so it'd be kind of nice to see them get statted up.
But it's very true. The females are definitely something I'd like to see more of.
He also brought up that his favorite models were the Crimson Fellowship models, which it's easy to see why. I love the Imperials, and when you scale it down to halflings, it adds so much character to them too. And it gives you that versatility to play them as halflings with Imperial arms or as Imperials that are halflings.
Yes, and you can also just use them as halflings with ranged weapon or halflings with spear. So you don't have to do one or the other. You can just switch between whatever you want. And it also gives you the option to play with your large collection, play against a friend to do demo games, and you can really explore.
Yeah, so I want to give a big thanks to Ed for being our first call out on the podcast for some of the things he's brought up. And I'd like to give out some closing thoughts. I'm sure you would too. First off, I got to give the biggest shout out to Alex right now, because I asked him for the lore and I asked him for a little help on this project, and he was so accommodating. He gave me the encyclopedia of halfling lore, which we actually cut down a little on that first episode because it was so much stuff. He suggested that you join me, which was such a great idea because this has been a great experience for both of us.
Going back to the encyclopedia thing, we cut it back a bit because we need to save something for him to put in the book later on, which is in the pipelines.
Yeah, and I want to give a big thank you to everyone listening, because I did not expect to get the numbers of people listening that we did. In the first episode alone, had 50 unique listeners.
Ooh, that's good.
I thought we might get 20 people. So I'm super happy with that. Just looking at the numbers, we have 50 unique listeners. Just in general, we had 8 new listeners in the last 7 days, which makes me so happy to see, just because I didn't expect this to take off. I thought it'd kind of just be a thing that I was doing in my room to hear my own voice.
And also, really interesting to hear Alex's feedback on it, because he said, he learned so much about his own game by this by listening to this podcast. So I will bring a huge thank you to you too as well. Thank you for making this podcast, filling this void that has been in the community. I have people saying to me, why isn't there more Ark-World YouTube films to watch? Or why isn't there more things to fill my fix? And this podcast, thank you for putting it up, because it fills that void.
It's my pleasure. And, I know there's been some question on if you would be in the next faction episodes, but anybody that wants to join in just could.
We'll be moving away from my expertise, and that being, well, in Ark-World terms, I have 2 expertises. The one is halflings, what models are there and what their story and history, and the second is bringing up old stuff that Alex hates.
Yeah.
And I'm not really going to be that much help. So I think maybe we should just bring out the people. Do you want me to continue? I'll be glad to. Or is there somebody else there that knows a lot and would like to help in.
Whatever
it would be a cool
faction
thing
would
to
you
have
use?
like a sort of like faction expert for each episode.
Y'all just let me know in the Facebook comments. But, once again, thank you, Alex. Thank you, listeners. And Dagfinn, thank you for being my first victim on this wonderful experiment that we've made.
It's been my pleasure, and hope the listeners enjoy spending time with us as well.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to our first deep dive, the Halfling faction. Tune in next time, a month from the release of this episode, for the next faction deep dive. Who will it be? You decide. If you're an expert in a faction, let me know and we'll talk about it. And have a wonderful Mildark day. All right.
Arr.
Arr.